So, by show of hands, who here loves their job? Like, you get excited in the morning. We're looking at about half, right? It's actually better than the national average. Gallup tracks whether or not workers are engaged in the work that they do. Over the past several years, only 1/3 of all workers are actually engaged in the work that they're doing. This is pretty serious. If you question the validity of this study, I want to run through some of the numbers. They're tracking over 80,000 people. The questions they're asking people are, do you have the opportunity to do what you do best? Is someone in your job encouraging your development? And do they believe that your opinions count? So the way they define things is engaged are those people that are enthusiastic about their work, they're psychological owners, they move the organization forward. This is only 1/3. About half the people are putting in time. They're psychologically unattached to the company or the work that they do. And this is the part that really gets me. This is 1/6 of the people are actively disengaged. This goes far beyond being unhappy. These people are resentful, they're acting out, and they're undermining what the engaged workers are trying to accomplish. Also from Gallup, the 40-hour work week is kind of a myth. 59% of salaried employees in the U.S. work over 40 hours. The overall average is 47 hours per week. My name is Aaron Blythe. I'm the lead organizer for DevOps KC. It's a meetup that I've run for over 4 years. And also the second DevOps Days conference is coming up in September, and you should attend this. Meet me and I'll get you information on that. I'm known for doing crazy things like standing on my head in presentations to make a point. I usually do demos. I've done demos with the Amazon Alexa before, but this presentation is going to be completely different. I'll be walking through a series of stories, and this presentation is a culmination of at least a decade's worth of experience in what I like to call reflective meetings, dealing with software. I'll dive into the numbers on this, but I've been part of or ran somewhere in the realm of 500 of these meetings. Honestly, I've probably reviewed more defects and their causes and their resolutions than anyone that I know. One of the things that I love to do is review code, and a lot of times this doesn't actually end up being a line item that you can just throw on a resume, but it is one of the things that I love to do. So this talk is called Trust, Just Culture, and Blameless Postmortems. I suggest taking notes during the presentation. I'm going to talk about situations where you may have a lot of feels. You may also have questions early on. I don't want you to forget them because I'm going to go in all sorts of different directions. The feels, those are for you. The questions, those are for me. And hopefully, since we have this big time slot, I can get through my material fast enough and do some questions at the end. So trust is super important, and it's built over time by repeatedly being there. It's really hard to build, but it's very easy to lose. Today we're going to talk about a just culture. Justice is usually defined as administering of like a deserved punishment or reward for some action. When we talk about justice in software, a lot of times we talk about when a mistake or violation has occurred, like what happens after that. So first I'm going to walk you through a fictional example of a really tough situation. And eventually I'm going to give you three examples of different types of meetings that are reflective that I've personally held with my teams and organizations and walk through some of the positives and negatives of the different types of approaches. To be clear, I am not a fan of meetings. I hate meetings. However, when I think back over the last 10 years, these have been some of the most effective time that I've spent with my teams. So let me introduce you to the team. First we have Jennifer. She's a solid executive. She's a co-founder of the business. She built the majority of the business by herself, and she does not dictate what the engineering team does. Now we have Rob. Rob used to code. Now he's a manager. Rob doesn't like his job anymore. Rob's schedule looks like this. As you can see, there's tons of hour meetings stacked on top of each other with very little time for his team. Rob optimizes on not getting in trouble. and showing the higher-ups that he cares. Rob's lost touch with his team, and his fuse has grown shorter and shorter and shorter. Rob's been saying more and more that his team doesn't have time to do the work that they're doing. So first we have Ethan. Rob refers to Ethan as his rock star. Rob goes to Ethan for everything. He's a senior engineer. He's been at the company for quite some time. Next we have Shelly. She's been at the company just as long as Ethan. She's also a senior engineer. She joined the team 2 years ago by her own choice because it was fresh. And she was looking for like the best team to be on. Shelly's not that engaged anymore. She doesn't really like her job. We also have Tabitha. She likes to go by Tabby though. She's a new engineer. She joined the team earlier this year, fresh out of college. And she doesn't have that much work to do. And they don't really give her that much work, even though she has a lot of potential and a lot of talent. Finally, we have Michael. Michael's kind of quirky and weird. He's an intern. He joined a couple months ago, and he's kind of left alone by the rest of the team. So the new product site goes down for the first time. The site only has beta clients, and up till now, they've been fairly understanding. Alerts are going off, but the alerts only go to Shelly's email. So Shelly starts up an IM conversation with Rob, who of course is in a meeting, and says, I think the site is down. Rob says, the whole site is down? Shelly says, I think so. Rob's getting mad already. Who changed something? Shelly says, I don't know. That's not true. Shelly knows. Ethan was heads down coding with his headphones on all morning. Shelly doesn't feel comfortable sharing things like this that make Ethan look bad. She's done this in the past, and of course, Ethan's the rock star, right? So Rob says, why not? How the hell can we not know? Get it back up. Shelly says, we don't know how, and Ethan's not at his desk. So Rob starts typing furiously. Well, I'm going to come find out. So Shelly, Tabby, and Michael are discussing what to do next in the developer's bay. Rob shows up. Rob says, we have to get this thing back up. Have you even tried anything? A series of things are tried. They, of course, all make it worse. It doesn't bring the site back up. 15 minutes later, Ethan shows up. Rob says, where the hell have you been? Ethan's like, I was out taking a walk. Wait until you see the new features I added to the beta site. Rob said, the site is down, so it was you. Ethan says, what? I told Shelly to review it. She always finds everything that's wrong. This is true. Shelly does find a lot of bugs. But Shelly was shut in the conference room interviewing for a new job this morning. She was on the phone. Didn't look at the code very close. Shelly says, don't put this on me. The code should have been built in continuous integration pipeline. But as if we're ever going to have time to do that on this team. Finger pointing continues. The site's still down. It remains down for a couple of hours until they manually back out those changes. Rob's mad. He leaves and he's like, you two need to figure this out. This cannot happen again. I already missed 2 meetings. I have to go to this next one. The team is left feeling defeated and dejected. Does this sound painful? Hopefully I didn't trigger anyone with this story, because unfortunately this is a brutally honest depiction of scenarios that I've seen over and over in both software and IT. But what about this situation is actually the part that's wrong? In our jobs, each of us have likely seen something similar to this happen. So just how do we get out of this spiral? I want to introduce you to a book by Sidney Dekker. The book is called Just Culture. Sidney Dekker is a professor at Griffith University in Gold Coast, Australia. Coincidentally, I went to Griffith University in Gold Coast, Australia. However, this was years before Sidney Dekker taught there, so this is just a grand falloon that you likely don't give that much of a care about, right? But while I was there, I didn't really go to class that much. I surfed. It was awesome. So while I was in Australia, I took lessons from the local guy at Surfer's Paradise. His name was Shane Horan. He taught me how to paddle out, how to pop up on my board. A few months later, about 100 kilometers south, down in Byron Bay, in a bar, and I look up and there's a surf video on, and I see Shane Horan on the screen. It was the Jaws Towing event in Hawaii. The thing is, he rode one of the biggest waves in the world in 2002, the year that I was there. So when I get back to surfers, I'm ecstatic. I go out to my beach where I usually surf and stuff, and I'm like, "You're Shane Horan. You rode the biggest wave in the world." And his response was like, "Ah, mate, it was pretty rad, but I came in second. I'm just another bloke." He did go on to tell me about this picture and other pictures, and how he crouched down like he was in surf position, and they measured how tall he would be. Then they measured the size of the wave based on that. What he said to me is, because seriously, how else are you going to do it, mate? There aren't measuring sticks for waves, are there? You got to use geometry. Both of those things stuck with me. I'm just another bloke, mate. There aren't measuring sticks for waves, mate. So, back to Sidney Dekker. Sidney Dekker is contemporary. You can follow him on Twitter. The third edition of his book came out in 2016, I believe. And he's written several other books in the last several years. The book has examples from healthcare, air traffic control, and many other industries. So he posits that there's two types of justice. The first one is retributive. This may be the one that you're more familiar with. In retributive justice, we ask, which rule is broken? Who did it? How bad was the breach? What should those consequences be? And who gets to decide this? However, in a restorative justice, we ask different questions. We ask, who is hurt? What do they need? Whose obligation is it to meet that need? And how do you involve the community in this conversation? Remember at the beginning, we talked about trust. I want you to think for a minute. If you're in a leadership position, are you creating trust? If you work for a leader, do you trust that leader? All things can improve. So when you go back to work on Monday, like, how are you going to improve? So if you are one taking notes, think about that throughout the rest of this presentation and write that down. I feel in the scenario that I described to you that potentially justice was served. The team made a mistake and was punished. However, this is retributive justice. If you're familiar with the Phoenix Project, it's a book, and there are 3 ways. The third way is probably the hardest, but it's probably the most important. It's to create a culture of continuous learning. Words like collaboration, those are easy, but easy to say, but they're easier said than done. Sidney Dekker believes that you can either have a culture that blames or a culture that learns, but you can't have both, so you have to choose one. So like I said, in a retributive culture, we ask these questions. A retributive culture is going to meet hurt with hurt. A restorative culture is going to meet hurt with healing, as we remember from these questions. Anecdotally, I'm the father of 3 daughters. We have instituted questions similar to these in our home when someone is hurt. When I hear the crying and something happens, I ask the question, are you hurt? Then I ask the question, where does it hurt? Can you point to it? And then I ask, what can I do to help you? Can I get you a Band-Aid or a boo-boo bag? Boo-boo bag in our house, or this is bean bag that sits in the freezer. This thing's not cold. Like, it is not going to make swelling go down. But you go get the boo-boo bag for somebody when they're hurt, it's magic. They feel better quickly. So if you have one takeaway from my talk, it should be to look up Sidney Dekker Just Culture and watch the 4 short courses, totaling about an hour, about 15 minutes each, with either your team or your manager, and discuss what you see there. So you want to work regularly to build this restorative culture. This is one where you tell the account, as opposed to paying or settling an account. It's one that's forward-looking, as opposed to backward-looking for your accountability. You talk about what is responsible, instead of who is responsible. You also have to make it safe to fail. Here you see me on a trapeze many years ago when I was 23. That picture on the right, I totally didn't make that connection after a flip. And I bit it hard, but there's a safety harness and the net. So it was fine, and it was fun. So in the DevOps handbook, there's a story about Netflix. It's always Netflix in the DevOps talk, right? There was a massive outage that was caused by an engineer that had taken Netflix down twice in the last 18 months. What would happen at your job if you were to take the site down twice in 18 months? At Netflix, that engineer was not fired. What Netflix had to say about that engineer was he was moving Netflix forward by miles, or not by miles, but by light years. So mistakes are going to be made, but trust is what's needed. So what happens when it's not safe to fail? What you'll see is hiding. You'll see secrecy. You'll see evasion, self-protection, finger-pointing. And all of those things are terrible, but for me, the worst thing is repetition of errors, like things that we should have learned from, and we continue to do them. So my example so far was contrived, was made up. First I'm going to tell you about some things that happened in real life that I was not involved in, and then I'm going to dig down deep into things that I was part of that are somewhat hard for me to talk about. I want to talk to you about the Fremont Assembly Plant. Has anybody ever heard of the Fremont Assembly Plant?
It's where the Teslas are.
Teslas end up there, right? It was a 411-acre manufacturing plant in California for GM. This is from Wikipedia. You can read a lot about this in like different Toyota books and stuff. But at the time of its closure, the Fremont employees were considered the worst workforce in automobile history in the United States, according to the UAW, the United Auto Workers. The employees drank alcohol on the job. They were frequently absent, enough so that the production line couldn't be started, and even committed petty acts of sabotage, such as putting Coke bottles inside the door panels so they'd rattle and annoy the customer that bought the car. It closed in 1982, I think March of 1982. So in spite of the history and the reputation, when Numi reopened under Toyota for production in 1984, most of those troublesome GM workforce was rehired. Some of them were sent to Japan to learn the Toyota production systems, and the workers that made the transition identified the emphasis on quality and teamwork by Toyota management as what motivated them to change their work ethic. Almost right away, the Numi factory was producing cars with as few defects per 100 cars as the plants in Japan. Same people, completely different results because of the culture. I already brought up, coincidentally, this historic Numi plant is now the home of Tesla. I think it's still the home of Tesla. I think they might have moved, I'm not sure. Which is the electric car manufacturer that open source, to a degree, their designs. Not only have they open sourced their designs, they've kind of kicked out the idea of a year, make, and model to some degree. Like things are manufactured in a certain year, you can download updates to their car, which is this awesome plan, new innovation that continues to come out of it. By show of hands, has anybody ever seen the Netflix culture deck? Only about 5 to 10. You should see this. It's one of the most popular decks out there on SlideShare. I think at the time I took a screenshot, like 12 million people had looked at it. My favorite slides from this deck, it's written by Reed Hastings from Netflix, is that Enron displayed these values in their lobby when you walk in their doors: integrity, communication, respect, excellence. Another slide says, companies show what they actually value by who gets rewarded, and who gets promoted, and who gets let go. The deck goes on to explain who those people will be at Netflix. They also say that brilliant jerks will not be tolerated. And of course, there's no vacation tracking, with the argument that we don't have a dress code, yet nobody shows up to work naked, so we don't necessarily have to have a policy for every single thing. I had the opportunity to see Adrian Cocroft speak at DevOps Enterprise Summit in 2015 about the culture deck. He told this story where he was speaking at a previous conference, and a CTO of a Fortune 500 company said, "We can't copy Netflix because it has all those superstar engineers. We don't have those people." To which Adrian replied, "We hired them from you. We just got out of their way." So Westrom's model actually helps us categorize the different types of cultures from the actual actions that you are observing inside of your company. We've got 3 different types of models. There's pathological, which is power-oriented. There's bureaucratic, which is rule-oriented. Slightly better, but still not the best. And then there's generative, which is performance-oriented. We want a generative culture where we have high cooperation. The messengers are trained instead of shot or neglected. The risks are shared instead of shirked. Bridging is encouraged instead of discouraged. Failure leads to inquiry, like these meetings that we're about to talk about. And novelty is implemented as opposed to crushed. So I want to take you through my personal experience over the last decade. I've done at least 200 root cause analysis meetings. I've done well over 100 retrospectives, maybe closer to 200, and definitely over 50 postmortems. I want to note, again, I am not a fan of meetings, but these types of meetings have been the hardest meetings that I've had, and they've been the most rewarding in my corporate career. So what I'm going to share is pretty personal. I do see some people in the audience that may have been a part of some of these meetings or know about this past, and I'd love to hear your thoughts after this talk. So I was working at this company back in 2007 or 2008. I was 30 years old. I wasn't even 30 years old yet. But a new position was created for me that was named Quality Architect. We had what I would consider, many other people would consider to be a severe defect problem. A large percentage of our patch packages, like 50%, that we sent out would fix the original problem. Actually, I think 97% of them would fix the original problem. Really good there. 50% of them would introduce a new problem. This was desktop software. Our clients did not trust us at all. They didn't want to take new packages. We originally called these used to works internally in engineering. However, when support started saying this to clients, this quickly changed to a more palatable corporate speak of previously functional defects. We did a multidisciplinary cross-organization workout inspired by the work done at GE in their Lean Black Belt series. And throughout this process, I found myself being extremely outspoken, to the point where they finally were like, "If you feel this strongly about it, then you fix it." I was naive, so I took the job. I talked a lot about apathy of our workforce at that time, and I continue to talk about that in different scenarios today. When I look back, I think even the leadership that put me in that position did not think much was going to come out of what we did. Probably because they were also apathetic. So I got right to work. I developed a class from scratch where I walked through some of the worst defects in history. These 3 combined to about $1 billion of lost either revenue or goodwill and things like this. So in this class, I tracked down the code in each instance to show my class. So what I'm showing you here is the Mars rover that we lost, which was an English to metric conversion. A rounding error in the original Pentium chip that cost Intel hundreds of millions of dollars, and the loss of a lot of goodwill, especially from scientists that needed that many significant digits. And the Ariane 5 explosion, which was caused by an integer overflow when the assertions were removed from the code. This thing went up, and then it started to just tilt a little bit, and then it went over and exploded. And the one that I thought was worst of all, especially being in a healthcare company, which was the Therac 25. This is a radiology machine and software that actually was created by a company across state over in St. Louis. The code here is in Ada. There was a race condition in the software And a South American company where it was used had an unanticipated use case. The UI would show that the radiology had not been administered, when in fact, it had. So the doctor would hit the button again, and hit the button again, repeatedly. This killed half a dozen cancer patients and wounded many more. So in this class, I explained some of our company's recent defects. We walked through what the cause was. Note, I've been at the company for all of 4 years. I was teaching the class on root cause analysis to people who have been at the company 10, 15, 20 years, and it created much of the software. This was neither my first or my last brush with imposter syndrome. Hey, I'm feeling a little bit of it right now. There's vomit on the sweater already. So what are the 5 whys of root cause? The example I like to use, someone's late to work. So I ask the question, why were you late to work? Like, well, my car wouldn't start. So I'm thinking, well, I pay you pretty well. You should probably get a new car, it's more reliable. But I'll play. Let's ask you why again. Why wouldn't your car start? Well, the battery's dead. All right, why was the battery dead? I left the car door open all night. Why'd you leave the car door open all night? I got home late. Why'd you get home late? I was out drinking all night. Well, that's a completely different cause than the original thing where I thought you needed a better car, and you maybe shouldn't drink so late, right? So in these meetings, before the meetings, I would pull the top 10 defects based on a number of factors from our issue tracking system, and the teams would have a month to research those defects and write up what they thought the root cause was, and how they prevent similar defects in the future. Sometimes they'd have to track down people from other teams. They'd have to track down people that were on their team but no longer on their team. Then we'd meet once a month and have these candid discussions over those 10 defects and classify and group the causes into possible preventive actions. There were rules that the cause could not simply be user error. And blame was not supposed to enter the discussion once. If it did, we would stop the discussion and move on. It's interesting how many engineers would start very apologetic and just say, well, this was just my fault. But for those willing, and the ones that were into the meetings, we got past this pretty quickly. We looked for ways to find better outcomes through talking about things honestly. For some groups, this was much harder. You could see in their eyes that they were hiding things because their manager was in the room. And their culture was one where they weren't supposed to talk about what happened. We did this for 3 months. It was every day for me over the course of 2 years, but the first 3 months, it was once a month for each of the 20 teams. Some of the teams completely on board with this. Other people were literally angry at me, and they did not hold back in telling me. After the first 3 months, I presented back to them a summary of the things that they said. We applied Pareto. If you've never heard of Pareto's law, it's called the 80-20 law. Vilfredo Pareto was an Italian engineer, an economist, and philosopher, and actually a gardener, who noticed that 20% of his peas yielded 80% of his results. So by taking the seeds from those pea pods, he'd actually get better results over time. This 80-20 rule has been applied to all kinds of things in economics and engineering. It's also been applied to software defects. So after I presented back to them the first 3 months, we had them do 3 more months, and then they presented back to us. We still did the meeting once a month. But they presented back to us what had changed. And for many teams, an epiphany happened. And it was this apathy that I was talking about, where they were previously finger pointing, and they were like, we are basically getting affected by other teams. They found out that they could actually affect their own destiny. Many of the reasons for their defects were things that they could affect. A lot of them ramped up on education because they realized that they had a lot of new Michaels and Tabbies who actually weren't being engaged. They found out quite a few other really good things. So for a lot of these teams, apathy started to shrink because they started to believe they were in control. We continued these 3-month cycles for 2 years, and 3 months is a quarter. We did a quarterly report up to management. And eventually, I moved on to another role, and I handed this off to another person. Many teams never got it. The worst was there was a team that had repeatedly, every month, the most defects. The leader of this team went so far as to find me in a bar one night and tell me I was ruining his team. They were spending all their time researching defects and didn't have time to send out new software. Being removed from this many years now, looking back, given their error rates, it might have been a good thing. Them sending out less software. So to quote the contemporary philosopher Taylor Swift, haters gonna hate, hate, hate. At this point, I want to bring up a book that's been really important to me. It's called Dealing with People You Can't Stand. I highly recommend this book. I've actually listened to this on audiobook, read by the two authors, twice in my life. There are 10 different types of people. There's the grenade, the tank. We might have seen the tank earlier in Rob. The thing you realize from this book is that over time, you are one of these 10 types of people. It's hard not to fall in one of these buckets. I personally have been many of these types of people. But through reflection and over time, I've been able to work on not being as bad. So at this point in my life, when I was doing the quality architect thing, I was enamored with quality to the point I found myself reading Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. This is a meandering collection of a past self through meditations, not unlike this presentation. From the introduction, the author says this should be in no way associated with a great body of factual information relating to Orthodox Zen Buddhism. It's not factual on motorcycles either. So while I tend towards the classical, I personally also meditate on things in my past, and I have for this presentation. So in this book, the author is talking about quality and makes this distinction between romantic and classical. A friend of the narrator decides not to learn how to maintain this expensive new motorcycle. The quality is just kind of built in. But when something breaks, he's frustrated because he needs to spend a lot of money getting a professional to fix it. Whereas the classical, the narrator has an older bike that he's usually able to diagnose and repair through rational problem solving. Being a rational person, I also have these inspirational bouts of creativity that are not rationally explained. When I sit down to write a presentation or sit down to write code, like I just could be way more productive for like if I'm in the right mindset for like this hour. It's just magical, right? Which is more on the classical side of me. Ultimately, the author comes to the conclusion that a Zen-like mix of being in the moment and combining this rationality and romanticism can create a better overall life. If you'll indulge me, I'd like to go on another tangent. Something that I've seen in software repeatedly over my career. There are many that only want to work on the latest new thing. I found it surprising that these types of people had so much to say about the work I was trying to do with the root cause analysis and re-injecting a conscience back into where I saw apathy. And they would often tell me that it was not as important as the new stuff that we were going to bring to market. So I've studied myself over time with this quote from Kurt Vonnegut. So another flaw in human character is that everybody wants to build and nobody wants to do maintenance. I have to be honest with you, the 5 whys have fallen out of favor. John Allspaw has an excellent blog on how it's dangerous to use the 5 whys if you're not like making sure you get blame out of that. Really, we should be asking how instead of why. And doing this in a group is where the magic happens. Even though it was easy to grasp, I explained in one example to you, and I think you get it. You ask why 5 times. It also is very tunnel vision. I've actually not used this this method in many years. However, I still know people that still use this, and it's actually very effective if done right. So over the next couple of years, I was at the company. The quality of the software improved dramatically. There were many factors and excellent things going on throughout the company on the focus of quality. However, what I felt like I did was interject a conscience back in where there was apathy. into the development life cycle by looking at these recent past mistakes. I had moved on when this was written in 2012, but there was an article written in class that said, as a result of these and other changes, not specifically talking in the work I did, but just changes that were done, Cerner's class rank has skyrocketed, moving from 7th to 2nd in a 4-year period, from December 2007 to December 2011. It was late in 2007 when we started being reflective on our recent defects. So like my buddy Shane told me, hey, there's no measuring stick for waves, right? We could only extrapolate years later, although I was asked to measure every quarter on whether or not these meetings were worth their time. And I could never really answer that until I left the job years later. Next type of meeting is post-mortem meetings. John Allspaw, who with Paul Hammond did the original 10 deploys a day at, I think they were at Flickr at the time. Moved on, was at Etsy. You need to read this blog. It's about blameless postmortems and a just culture. It inspired me to actually start digging into all this stuff and make my teams better. Kind of from the blog, but this is what we did in our postmortem meetings. Before the meeting, someone would gather a timeline of the incident, facts, assumptions, expectations. And during the meeting, we would level set the expectations at the beginning. We had like kind of a thing that we would read. If someone heard the word could have, should have, or would have, they were supposed to raise their hand. They were supposed to stop that line of reasoning, because it didn't matter. It didn't matter what could have happened. All that mattered is that we understood and that we were a learning organization. From these meetings, we'd only take action items that could be assigned and completed within the iteration, sometime in the next week. We'll go through a quick example. We ran the Zabbix server on my team. The Zabbix is an application, which you see in yellow. It ran on an operating system, which was Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And that ran on a machine, which was a physical machine, and it had SAN backing the storage for a very large MySQL database. My team was a development team. We were responsible for Zabbix. However, we weren't responsible for Zabbix in production because they were not yet using our code, which we wrote in Chef, to deploy the application. There was an operations team, and they were responsible for the machine after it was handed over to them. And there was an infrastructure team, and they were responsible for creating the machine and handing it over. What had happened was, over the course of 3 months, there was all kinds of incidents. At least twice a week for 3 months straight, our operations team was getting woke up at 2 or 3 in the morning because the application was going down. This caused problems because people would either not get their alerts or they would get way more alerts because Zabbix is this awesome alerting software, right? I was told that this is not your responsibility, Aaron. Stay out of this. They're not using your stuff yet in production, but like it's terrible, right? The operators are always cranky. They're mad at us. My team's kind of taking this stand. Well, if you would just use our Chef stuff, that would obviously fix everything, right? So we started doing these post-mortem meetings, mostly because I'm not good at listening, right? Or taking direction. I could see that this was a terrible thing, so every time there was an incident after the first 3 months, for the next 3 months, we had a meeting about that. And then we grouped things together. But what we found out, and which I didn't know because of this separation between the teams, I was only supposed to work with the operations team, and they were supposed to work with the infrastructure team. I found out on these calls at 3 a.m., they were always engaging the infrastructure team. And the SAN came up a lot. Sure did come up a lot. SAN. What's that? I don't even know what that is. It's a storage array network, right? And so I did a bunch of research about this. I talked to really smart people when I went out to ChefConf. And I was explaining this error over some beers with the guy who wrote the chef cookbook for SAN stuff. And we found out this one file, multipath.com, was actually where our problem was. What had happened was, originally this machine here was set up 2 years ago. And at that time, it had the drivers for all of the SANs from all the different vendors and all the different machines that we could possibly use. Over the course of that 2 year, another vendor or another machine style was added into that SAN. driver wasn't on our machine. I figured this out by taking a newer machine they had provisioned for us and diffing this file and saying we need those things on our machine. So our team was mad at the operations team. The operations team was mad at our team. The actual cause was out of both of our control. There's an excellent short book from O'Reilly by David Zebek on the human side of postmortems that I wish was there when I was younger and contemplating all of these different things. I believe the PDF form is like a total of 32 pages. Yeah, he outlines a bunch of different types of biases you could have. Hindsight bias is knowing what we already know, or knowing what we know now. Outcome bias is attaching how bad the outcome was to the decisions that were made. You can make the same two decisions and have like a really minor defect, but then a really big one, and then you get mad at people that, because of the outcome, not because of the error. Availability bias, which is really interesting. This is overestimating things that are easily recalled and underestimating things that are easily forgotten. So an example would be like tornadoes. You're like, tornadoes are terrible. They kill people. They kill so many people. They probably kill way more people than asthma, right? Because you've seen recently on the news that tornadoes are bad. Tornadoes are terrible. They're terrible things. Asthma kills disproportionately way more people. But you have this idea in your head that something is terrible because you've seen it recently, or it's been blown out of some sort of proportion. And it's easy to forget other things. We also have sunk cost bias. This is where, like, we've already started eating this bowl. It tastes terrible. We're just going to keep on eating because we started, right? And then confirmation bias. This is where we find data that just confirms what we already think. So for the people in the crowd, I'm not trying to get political, but if you watch MSNBC or Fox, they feed you some of this, right? You've got an idea in your head, and they give you some data, goes with your idea. Right? So that's the example there. So now on to the third type of meeting. Coming from the agile development world, retrospective meetings are my favorite. I managed a team where we did these without fail every 2 weeks for 2 years. And I've been on many other teams over the last 7 years where we've done this too. This is what we call our feels meeting. We were lucky enough to have a beanbag room close to where we sat in our cube farm. And we started the meeting with a fact-finding mission. And where we used sticky notes. So we had quiet time. That was open laptop for the first 10 minutes of the meeting. We would write on the Post-it notes, and then we would put them on the board, and we'd do the meetings in different types, but one of these 4 quadrants for this particular meeting. The rest of the meeting was closed laptop, and we did a discussion. We would categorize, and we would group. One thing that we thought was important as problem solvers was thank yous. We usually look at things that are wrong as problem solvers. We decided as a group that we wanted to spend time encouraging behavior that all of us liked. We'd also put things that we liked and we wanted to repeat. We also had a dislike change, and you can see the groups here. In this particular one, probably about 10 deep. Probably was 10 people in that room. We found that the problems that we had were shared. Things that were making us upset at work were shared. So we would get these feelings out. We would air them out. Then we'd have new ideas. This actual iteration was light on new ideas because we were kind of firing on all cylinders at that point, trying to build a continuous delivery system. Then as a group, we talked through all these things together. Sometimes we would classify things in this way, which is why we started referring to this as our feels meeting. So how we would, basically take those notes and put them. Here you see my pictures of being really happy all the way to really angry. They're terrible. They made people laugh though a little bit, right? But again, we're applying Pareto because there's 5. A lot of times people do +1, -1, and even, or happy, sad, or whatever. We've got 5. So the 20% on the end, the things that really make us angry, the things that really make us happy, that's what we want to focus on. We published a document that was a summary of these meetings publicly in a place that was easily accessible and everyone in the company could see it. action items would come out of these meetings, often involving working with other teams to work through things. The post-mortems that I described earlier actually came out of discussions that we had in our retrospectives. We decided as a team that we were going to spend some of our time going and trying to do post-mortems with this other team. Retrospectives are likely my favorite because we were able in many cases to do them from the start, and they felt much more proactive than reactive. Further, we had a meeting at the beginning of the year to guide who we thought we were and who we wanted to be. We crafted we-believe statements by actually brainstorming the things that we felt like we believed as a team, and we wanted to actually categorize how we thought other people saw us and how we wanted them to see us. And then we published those. These are our we-believe statements for one particular year. We believe that we ran a configuration management software, Chef. We believe that a minimum number of associates needed to directly touch the nodes approaching 0. We felt like people shouldn't SSH on the machine. They should have configuration management, and that should do the work. They should do the work up front, move everything left. We believe that the tools that we're in charge of matter, and they improve the lives of our users. We should automate all the things, and that the tools that we worked on should be hardened so that we can find the root cause and drive to corrective action. So we published these. We wanted people to know what we thought our team was. I love Kurt Vonnegut. He's got this sci-fi book called Sirens of Titan, where Winston Niles Rumford is on his way to Mars with his dog when he goes through Chrono, Synclastic, and Fungible, which is those places where all kinds of truths fit together. So he ends up in this spiral stretching from the sun out to Betelgeuse. And he only materializes on the Earth for like a day or something, once a year. But he brought back a lot of truths from the universe. And because of these truths, like in the book there's this children's encyclopedia, which says that now you can say that your daddy is right, and the other little child's daddy is wrong, but the universe is an awfully big place. And there's enough room for an awful lot of people to be right about things and still not agree. This is what centered me for the retrospective meetings. We did not have to agree. People in the room could be right. If you're fighting over who's right, people dig down, and then they try to just get their point across, as opposed to trying to get a solution. Because there's many solutions that are going to work. Again, not a fan of meetings. Just a couple weeks ago, John Oswald tweeted, the dilemma, of course, is accurately anticipating which meetings will repair costly potential misunderstandings and which ones won't. So let's go back to our original example. Rather than provide you with an epiphany, we're going to go back and fork time. We're going to fork reality. And we're going to go back a little over a year and change one thing. They're going to have retrospective meetings. So if you're looking for something with a story arc, where there's epiphanies over time, I recommend The Goal by Elijah Goldratt, or The Phoenix Project by Gene Kim. So our change is that there's retrospective meetings. Here we have Rob again. What he does is he still reviews code and comments to stay in touch with the team, but he rarely commits new code. Rob's schedule looks like this. He has blocked out afternoons. He has one-on-one meetings for an hour with each person on the team that alternate every 2 weeks for the 4 people. Does not take meetings without an agenda. Does not take meetings over 30 minutes. And he only meets in the morning unless he otherwise can't help it. Rob likes his job. Rob optimizes on how we can make things better. Rob connects with his team regularly and asks if he can pair to work through what they're trying to solve. Rob refers to Ethan now as the mentor, not the rock star. Ethan's responsible for Michael's questions and making sure that they're answered. And this comes up in the daily stand-up. Rob refers to Shelley now as his quality guru. She's actually favored in many ways. She's not a rock star. She's awesome. Our new engineer, Tabby, has this huge potential, and she's already contributing tons to the team because she's been brought in and actually been taught things. She's actually on a trajectory to become a senior engineer much faster than either Shelley or Rob did. or Shelly or Ethan. I mean the people, I can't even remember who they are. Michael's still quirky. However, Michael's been brought into the team a little more. Michael's actually going to value this experience when he goes back to college in the fall. This is something that he's going to build on, and he might actually want to come back and work for the company. So as a result of the past year of retrospective meetings every 2 weeks, things are purposely different. They've chosen, with reason, to make these things different over the past year. They use a group chat. They happen to use Slack instead of these one-on-one IMs. They have an alert rotation assigned instead of everything just going to Shelly's email. The alert is posted to the group chat. The acknowledgement comes from PagerDuty directly into the Slack room so that everyone can see it, so that we know that even if Rob's on a walk, he saw it. He's on his way back. Not Rob, Ethan. The code is built in continuous integration and continuous delivery because through the meetings they're like, we have to do this. They have a rollback switch for their DNS that they enact at the 10-minute mark. So they bring up DNS-A and DNS-B, and it's automated. So they actually continuous delivery into this other DNS, and then when they want to go to prod, they just switch it over. But right now it's just automated. And then the 10 minutes comes, they just switch back, right? And they have Blameless postmortem scheduled. In this Blameless postmortem from this incident, they decide that what they're going to do going forward is the test environment needs to look more like prod. They found that they had some assumptions in the test environment that look like prod. So they're actually going to make that specific change. Not the broad statement, but the thing that they found for this one in this iteration. They're going to use that DNS-A and DNS-B as they do today. And it's going to auto-deploy to B, but it's not going to auto-switch over. They're going to do some testing on it first, and then switch over. Trust is much higher on this team. This time just as it is of a restorative nature. Duplicate. Gene Kim, who's one of the authors of the Phoenix Project and the DevOps Handbook, has said that building a high trust culture is likely the largest management challenge of this decade. So I feel humbled to share my experiences with you on these types of meetings. I feel like I have a lot more to learn from you with your feedback. The big things, as I meditate on this, that I want you to take away is that to err is human. Blame does not do what you likely think it does. We're wired in such a way that we want to assign blame to something, and that makes us feel better for a short burst. On the other side, the receiving side, that blame stays with that person for days, weeks, years. So your couple minutes of feeling better because you've assigned this blame doesn't cut it. Group reflection is key. Regardless of what type of meeting you use, injecting that conscience back into your team will actually get rid of a lot of the problems. Injustice definitely comes in more forms than just retribution. Did I mention that I love Kurt Vonnegut? It's my favorite novel, Slaughterhouse-Five. So, in the beginning of the book, he's like, I think about my education sometimes. I went to the University of Chicago for a while after the Second World War. I was a student in the Department of Anthropology. At that time, they were teaching that there was absolutely no difference between anybody. They may still be teaching that. Another thing they taught was that no one was ridiculous or bad or disgusting. Shortly before my father died, he said to me, you know, you never wrote a story with a villain in it. I told him that was one of the things I learned in college after the war. I've tried not to make heroes or villains of the stories I've told you today. We're all just people. Or as my surf instructor put it, I'm just another blowpipe. I hope that you are engaged in what you do, and if you are not, for goodness sake, do not undermine those at your work that are engaged in their work. Obviously, if you were to ask me, which you haven't, I would tell you to read everything written by Kurt Vonnegut. However, here are some of the other things that are important that I brought up that you should read. You should be able to find me, to reach out to me in some way from aaronblythe.org. A lot of my presentations, videos, and slides are up there. I am fun employed for the next few weeks before I start my next job. So if you think this is something that people at your company need to hear, I will have the videos up. And I'd be willing to maybe do this at one or two companies to gather feedback, because this is a presentation that I plan to do multiple times in the future. So again, just reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, all those things. Links are on aaronblythe.org. That's all I got. I've got 4 minutes for questions, and then we get out of the way for the next speaker. So. Anybody have any thoughts? What's that?
What's the first book we should read from Kurt Vonnegut?
The first book? Slaughterhouse Five.
In your 4 quadrant, I said green ones in the bottom right. What was that?
Sure, let's go back there. Let's go back time. Man, I got a lot of slides.
You passed it.
This one? We had thank yous down here. We did like repeat up here. We had new ideas and dislike or change. So that was just one of the many ways. We tried to keep this meeting fresh. We didn't want to make people be like, oh yeah, it's just another meeting. Like I said, I hate meetings. They have to be different. It can't be the same meeting over and over, otherwise it's just like all corporate meetings.
Dislike change, did you bring proposals? How do you affect that change with your action items?
Let's see, this particular one, I'm trying to think of something.
I can tell you one. We got one. Architect